All right. In honor of the um beautiful holiday of Valentine's Day. Arguably, I think it's like my fourth favorite holiday. It's behind, or actually, is that true? My my favorite holiday is New Year's. My second favorite holiday is, oh my god, what was my second favorite holiday? It might actually be Valentine's Day. I might have lied. It might be um New Year's, Valentine's Day, and then Independence Day because I'm a fucking American. Anyways, first published. To celebrate upcoming Valentine's Day, I'm gonna read an entry about love from our good old friends, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I'm gonna read about love. It was first published April 8th, 2005, on a Friday. I would have been 2 years old at the time, I think. Well, no. Yeah, I would have been 2 years old, almost turning three. Substantive revision. On September 1st, 2021, I would have been 19 at the time. Um, the S. Okay. Let's get into reading mode. Reading mode. I'm about to read about love so hard, dude. All right. This essay focuses on personal love, or the love of particular persons as such. Part of the philosophical task in understanding personal love is to distinguish the various kinds of personal love. For example, the way in which I love my wife is seemingly very different from the way I love my mother, my child, and my friend. This task has typically proceeded hand in hand with philosophical analysis of these kinds of personal love. Analysis that in part respond to various puzzles about love. Can love be justified? If so, how? What is the value of personal love? What impact does love have on the autonomy of both the lover and the beloved? Uh, I think I'm just only gonna read preliminary distinctions, and then we'll read love as union, love as robust concern, love as valuing. Holy shit! And then emotional use. Okay. All right. The value and justification of love. Wait, that's kind of fire. Okay. Anyways, preliminary distinctions. In ordinary conversations, we often say things like the following: I love chocolate or skiing. I love doing philosophy or being a father. I love my dog or cat. I love my wife or mother or child or friend. However, what is meant by love differs from case to case. One may be understood as meaning merely that I like this thing or activity very much. And two, the implication is typically that I find engage that I the implication is typically that I find engaging in a certain activity or being a certain kind of person to be a part of my identity, and so what makes my life worth living. I might just as well say that I value these. By contrast, 3 and 4 seem to indicate a mode of concern that cannot be neatly assimilated to anything else. Thus, we might understand that the sort of love at issue in 4 to be roughly a matter of caring about another person as the person she is for her own sake. Accordingly, 3 may be understood as a kind of deficient mode of the sort of love we typically reserve for persons. Philosophical accounts of love have focused primarily on the sort of personal love at issue in number 4. Such personal love will be the focus here. though, see Frankfurt 1999 and Jaworska and Wonderly 2017 for attempts to provide a more general account that applies to non-persons as well. Even within personal love, philosophers uh, from the ancient Greeks on okay, sorry. Philosophers from the ancient Greeks on have traditionally distinguished three notions that can properly be called love: eros, agape, and philia. It will be used to distinguish these three and say something about how contemporary distinctions typically blur these distinctions, sometimes intentionally so, or use them for other purposes. Eros originally meant love. Originally meant love in the sense of a kind of passionate desire for an object, typically sexual passion. Uh, Nigrin? There's no way that's bro's name. Nigrin. Bro, there's no way that's bro's name. Nigrin? Is that how you say it? Pronunciation. Nigrin. Can I just get like an audio? Okay. Okay, how about we. Are you fucking saying it? I don't hear anything. Nigrin? Nigrin. That's how he said it. Oh my god. Why does it take. Oh my god. Oh shit. Okay, so in Nigrin. It's not. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Nigrin describes. Bro, stop Nigrin around. All right, anyways. Nigrin describes Eros as the love of desire or acquisitive love, and therefore as egocentric. Ooh, okay. Sobel similarly describes Eros as selfish and as a response to the merits of the beloved, especially the beloved's goodness or beauty. What is evident in Sobel's description of Eros is a shift away from the sexual to love something in the erosic sense, erosic sense, to use the term Sobel coins, is to love in a way that, by being responsive to its merits, is dependent on reasons. Ooh. Such an understanding of Eros is encouraged by Plato's discussion in the Symposium, in which Socrates understands sexual desire to be a deficient response to physical beauty in particular. Desire to be a deficient response to physical beauty in particular. A response which ought to be developed into a response to the beauty of a person's soul and ultimately into a response to the form beauty. Wait, okay. I just want such an understanding of Eros is encouraged by Plato's discussion in the Symposium, in which Socrates understands sexual desire to be a deficient response to physical beauty in particular. A response which ought to be developed into a response to the beauty of a person's soul, and ultimately into response to the form beauty. Sobel's intent in understanding Eros to be a reason-dependent sort of love is to articulate a shape contrast. Is to articulate a sharp contrast with agape, a sort of love that does not respond to the value of its object. Agape has come primarily through the Christian tradition to mean the sort of love God has for us persons, as well as our love for God, and by extension, our love for each other, a kind of brotherly love. In the paradigm case of God's love for us, agape is spontaneous and unmotivated, revealing not that we merit that love, but that God's nature is love. Rather than responding to antecedent antecedent value in its object. Agape instead is supposed to create value in its object and therefore to initiate our fellowship with God. Consequently, Bardwar characterizes agape as independent of the loved individual's fundamental characteristics as the particular person she is. And Sobel infers that agape, in contrast to eros, is therefore not reason dependent, but is rationally incomprehensible, admitting at best of casual or historical explanations. Finally, philia. Oh God! Pedophilia, the love of children. What the fuck? Yo, philia. Okay. Why is that so funny? All right. Finally, philia originally meant as a kind of affectionate regard or friendly feeling towards not just one's friends, but also possibly towards family members, business partners, or one's country at large. Oh my God. But so if you're a pedophilia, you just love children. There's nothing wrong with loving children, obviously. Um, like Eros, philia is generally, but not universally, understood to be responsive to good qualities in one's beloved. This similarity between Eros and philia has led Thomas to wonder whether the only difference between romantic love and friendship is the sexual involvement of the former, and whether that is adequate to account for the real difference we experience. The distinction between Eros and philia becomes harder to draw with Sobel's attempt to diminish the importance of the sexual in Eros. Maintaining the distinction among eros, agape, and philia becomes even more difficult when faced with contemporary theories of love, including romantic love and friendship. For, as discussed below, some theories of romantic love understand it along the lines of the agape tradition as creating value in the beloved, and other accounts of romantic love treat sexual activity as merely the expression of what otherwise looks very much like friendship. Given the focus here on personal love, Christian conceptions of God's love for persons and vice versa will be omitted, and the distinction between eros and philia will be blurred as it typically is in contemporary accounts. Instead, the focus here will be on these contemporary understandings of love, including romantic love, understood as an attitude we take towards other persons. In providing an account of love, philosophical analyses must be careful to distinguish love from other positive attitudes we take towards persons, such as liking. Intuitively, love differs from such attitudes as liking in terms of its depth, and the problem is to elucidate the kind of depth we intuitively find love to have. Some analyses do this in part by providing thin conceptions of what liking amounts to. Thus, Singer and Brown understand liking to be a matter of desiring, an attitude that at best involves its object having only instrumental and not intrinsic value. Yet this seems inadequate. Surely there are attitudes towards persons intermediate between having a desire with a person as its object and loving the person. I can care about a person for her own sake and not merely instrumentally, and yet such caring does not and yet such caring does not on its own amount to non-deficiently loving does not amount to loving her. For it seems I can care about my dog in the exact same way, a kind of caring which is insufficiently personal for love. It is more common to distinguish loving from liking via the intuition that the depth of love is to be explained in terms of a notion of identification. To love someone is somehow to identify yourself with them, whereas no such notion of identification is involved in liking. As Newsombaum puts it, The choice between one potential love and another it can feel and be like a choice of a way of life, a decision to dedicate oneself to these values rather than these. Liking clearly does not have this sort of depth. Whether love involves some kind of identification, and if so, exactly how to understand such identification, is a central bone of contention among the various analysis of love. In particular, Whitting argues that the appeal to a notion of identification distorts our understanding of the sort of motivation love can provide. For taken literally, it implies that love motivates through self-interest rather than through the beloved's interest. Thus, Whitting argues central to love is the possibility that love takes the lover outside herself, potentially forgetting herself and being moved directly by the interest of the beloved. Of course, we need not take the notion of identification literally in this way. In identifying with one's beloved, one might have concern for one's beloved that is analogous to one's concern for oneself. Another common way to distinguish love from other personal attitudes is in terms of a distinctive kind of evaluation, which itself can account for love's depth. Again, whether love essentially involves a distinct kind of evaluation, and if so, how to make sense of that evaluation is hotly disputed. Closely related to questions of evaluation are questions of justification. Can we justify loving or continuing to love a particular person? And if so, how? For those who think the justification of love is possible, it is common to understand such justification in terms of evaluation, and the answers uh, uh, here affect various accounts attempts to make sense of the kind of constancy or commitment love seems to involve, as well as the sense in which love is directed at particular individuals. In what love follows, theories of love are tentatively and hesitantly classified into four types. Love is union, love is robust concern, love is valuing, and love as an emotion. It should be clear, however, that particular theories classified under one type sometimes also include, without contradiction, ideas central to other types. The types identified here overlap to some extent. In some cases, classifying particular theories may involve excessive pigeonholing. Such cases are noted below. Part of the classificatory uh, part of the classific- part of the classificatory problem is that many accounts of love are quasi-reductionistic, understanding love in terms of notion like affection, evaluation, attachment, etc., which themselves never get analyzed. Even when these accounts eschew explicitly reductionist language. Very often little attempt is made to show how one such aspect of love is conceptually connected to others. As a result, there is no clear or obvious way to classify particular theories, let alone identify what the relevant classes should be. What time are we at? Oh, I mean, like what? Between 15 to 20 minutes. I'm okay with like doing like 15 to 20 minutes today. Honestly, this is a very interesting, like technically I could read the fucking second one and the third one and it'd probably equal out to like 30 minutes. But honestly, I just don't give a fuck that much. This is as much as I want to read today. Um and yeah, hopefully I'll get to see you guys again soon. I love you guys, and let's continue our journey of information.